I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we are the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast where we walk listeners through the ins, outs, and retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X-books that come out every week. This is for the week of November 26th, and we actually just have 4 books, pretty light load. Let's go for it.
First up, we have Cyclops number 7. It's written by John Layman, the second issue of his run, drawn by Javier Garrón, and colored by Chris Sotomayor, who's the sole remaining member of the original creative team still with the book. We really disliked Cyclops number 6, the first issue of Layman's run. We felt like it didn't feel like a Cyclops book. It was a fun story, but really bad tonal whiplash from the end of the Rucka run. And it just wasn't clicking for us. This issue, that's changing. And while I don't like it nearly as much as I liked Rucka and Dodderman...
I mean, I don't like much as much as I liked that. Yeah, I was going to
say. I am now guardedly optimistic for the series.
Yeah, and it's strange because, for me at least, when the issue first starts, it felt very much like the previous issue, and my meh sensors were all lit up. But something changes just partway through the book, and it starts feeling a little less generic space story and a little more, exactly, Scott and Christopher. Hopefully that voice will remain. If so, I think this book could end up being pretty good in this run.
Yeah, there's causality and agency here that there wasn't before. In number 6, it just felt like things happening and sort of explained and sort of made sense, but mostly just let's switch things really fast, really hard. And this one's a little bit slower, and it's a lot more character-driven. And the characters, and specifically Cyclops, has a lot more agency in it, which helps significantly, I think.
Yeah, now, I think part of that tonal whiplash you described was the drastic difference between the current artist and the previous one, Russell Dodderman.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Dodderman didn't draw the last couple issues of Rucka's run, but they were still very much in the style he'd established.
Right, that more realistic style. With this, it's more cartoony, and I think for me, that's what led to the wacky space hijinks feel that I wasn't as fond of. But what cartoony can also do is make characters very facially expressive, and we see some of that coming in this issue with it, which I thought was really cool.
See, again, I don't think that that's something that's new or a change. I do think that the style fits the new story. The question for me is whether the new story fits the characters in the book, and whether Layman can write that organically, which I'm still kind of out on, although, again, I'm more optimistic now than I was a month ago.
Second on the list, we have Amazing X-Men number 13, which is written by a new writer for the book, James Tynion IV, after the first 3 presumably had design flaws of some sort. Art is by Jorge Jimenez, and colors are by Rochelle Rosenberg. So this book, I think we've been kind of mixed on this book. It's been kind of a cartoony romp, but it's also been very dark at times and kind of out of continuity, and so it's felt, I haven't really known what to make of it so far.
Yeah, it's come across before as kind of the book that they wanted to have stand as the sort of outside of continuity, accessible, kind of all ages X book. It's definitely drawn to look that way, but then there's an awful lot of murder. And so it's had a lot of trouble sort of finding a coherent tone and really finding its voice.
That said, I'm not really sure where the book's going from here. Well, I mean, we've seen the solicits. It's something about Juggernaut. But this issue, I think, really does accomplish those goals. This is a standalone story called Charm School, and it just focuses on a few characters, specifically Nightcrawler-and-Northstar, who are teachers at the Jean Grey School right now, and Anole, who is a kid from New X-Men Academy X, that sort of era. And it's about him going on a date, chickening out because he looks weird and he's worried his date won't like him, and then getting attacked by Lady Mastermind, who sends a bunch of terrible illusions after him. But basically, it's just all about Nightcrawler and Northstar trying to be good teachers and good mutant bros to kind of build the kids' confidence up.
Yeah, I mean, look, we should probably qualify that we're both really hardcore suckers for feel-good queer teen coming-of-age stories.
We are, it's true.
But this is a really nice one. It's really good. It's just... it's a feel-good story that doesn't feel pointless and sappy. I mean, it's obviously not an ongoing. You couldn't, within a superhero book, you probably couldn't pull a series worth of plot out of it, but as an interstitial issue, it's exactly what I want.
And one of the things I've also really been wanting is Nightcrawler written well. It hasn't really happened, in my opinion, all that much since he was resurrected. And with this, it's a modern Nightcrawler. He's very much in his current role as someone who's trying to be responsible in the school. But he's also got that sort of charming, swashbuckly, friendly good-heartedness that I've really missed lately.
Yeah, he's both sincere and fun, and I think that's a balance that it's been a really long time since we've seen done well.
Mm-hmm. And in this book, I think the characters are chosen quite well. I mean, it's about a kid who's going on a date and is worried about how he looks, but really, for me, it's a lot about queerness. It's a lot about being comfortable with one's identity. And so we have Northstar, a canonically gay character, and Nightcrawler, who is blue and fuzzy and looks kind of like the devil, if the devil were blue and fuzzy. And so it's an interesting set of viewpoints that manages to, I think, get the metaphor across very well without being overly preachy.
So you know what I loved? I
What?
loved that it wasn't a metaphor. I liked that his physical mutation wasn't played as a metaphor for queerness. Like, the angst in the issue, I mean, the fact that that the person he was meeting for a date was a guy had nothing to do with the major angst in the issue. The major angst in the issue is that he was nervous about the fact that he was visibly a mutant.
That's true.
And those were things that coexisted, and it's a kind of intersectionality that we don't see a lot at least outside of, Greg Pak's Storm.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, I think a lot of the time you have the mutant metaphor serving as a replacement for things like queerness or issues of race or whatever.
Which is a damn shame.
Yeah, and it's nice to see them kind of coexisting and the metaphor actually being a nuanced metaphor. So, Amazing X-Men number 13, good job. I enjoyed the hell out of you. Nice.
Next up, we have the required Death of Wolverine tie-in. This is the Logan Legacy number 5. It's written by Ray Fox, drawn by Elia Benetti, and colored by Brett Smith, and as with number 4, continues the trend of making me care about characters I was previously entirely uninterested in, this time Wolverine's son Dakin.
I almost feel cheated. I mean, I take such joy in despising and disparaging events and crossovers, and this stupid crossover's got, like, good stuff in it. What's up with that?
Well, yeah, it's about 50-50, but and even this series has been inconsistent, as there's a different writer on each issue, and so a lot of it's dependent on those. In this case, it's Ray Fox, and he's doing a superlative job. Elia Benetti's art isn't quite up to the same standard. He's a really good figure artist. He draws faces in a way that remind me a lot and very positively of John Cassidy, but his layouts and his panel composition I feel like are a little bit stiff, and I want more from this because I feel like it's a story that should be a little bit more resonant visually than it is. The writing is so good and the art is so close, but just not quite there.
That said, I do think the pacing of the art, which obviously that's part writer, part artist right there, works very well for a story like this, for this very deliberate, ritualistic in terms of content as well as in terms of tone, story.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to put that all on Fox because if you're familiar with his other work, he is such an amazing structuralist as a writer and also as an artist because he's a cartoonist. So if you look at works like One Soul or The People Inside, I mean that's totally I'm gonna say that's probably totally Fox. The other thing I like about this book, I want to go back to the characterization for a second because one of the things that I mentioned about Lady Deathstrike is that it was a really significant shift for the character, but one that also made complete sense given their previous history. And I feel like this has done the same thing. This takes a character who was, if not one-dimensional, at least fairly simplistically characterized, and adds a dimension to them, and adds, a change that would because this Wolverine's son is really deeply obsessed with him, and has defined himself largely in terms of opposition to or being better than his dad. And the way Wolverine's death would affect him and the changes in direction that would cause, I think, ring really true in this story.
Yeah, I think if the death of Wolverine has been successful with one thing in the Marvel Universe, it's changing stuff up, giving us new story opportunities. That's what a major character's death should do, and apparently sell a whole ridiculous amount of books on Marvel's perspective.
Wow.
But it's nice to see an event that's not just there for the sake of being an event that's there, like Schism, I think, for the sake of creating some really interesting future story opportunities.
We disagree about Schism, but this is a good book.
So last up, we have a last issue of a series, which is Wolverine and the X-Men, number 12. This is written by Frank Thierry, with art by Jorge Fornes, and colors by Israel Silva.
Is this actually the last issue? I thought there was one more after this.
No, this is the last one. We actually thought last time that number 11 was the last issue.
And I still think that we should be pretending that 11 was the last issue, because this issue is pointless.
Yeah, it's not that it's a terrible issue. I mean, I didn't regret the time I wasted reading it. But yeah, if you're going to have a send-off for a book, this is a really weird one. It's just sort of a simplistic Axis tie-in. It's about Quentin Quire at the Hellfire Club having a party and inviting his friends from the Jean Grey School, and then Storm, who's been inverted by Axis and turned into a big jerk, shows up and ruins everything for him. And I feel like that could make a good, say, Axis Revolutions story, or at least an adequate Axis Revolution story. But for the last issue of the second volume of a series that only ran 12 issues, I don't think that's a good plan, to be honest.
Especially when the previous issue was a really good ending point. The other thing about this is I do not buy inverted Quentin Quire. I do not buy him at all. Quentin Quire is the definition of chaotic neutral, okay? He acts in self-interest, occasionally enlightened self-interest. And we've also seen what inverted Quentin would be, because that's original Quentin.
Yeah, and I should point out, for those of you who don't recall, it has been officially stated that the inversion happening in Axis is straight up Dungeons & Dragons alignment opposite shifts.
Which is hilarious.
It's kind of ridiculous. What I really don't buy is inverted Storm. I mean, we see her as very primal and sensual and uncontrolled. Like, okay, that's fine.
But that's also normal Storm.
Yeah, and in this we also see her as very, like, petty and vindictive, and I don't think that's Storm or inverted Storm. That's just not Storm related at all.
Yeah, inversion Storm, at least in this, is like evil Paris Hilton.
Evil? Whoa.
Like malicious Paris Hilton.
There's so much wrong.
You can make a case for normal Paris Hilton being lawful evil.
Well, that's true, but the point is Paris Hilton of any sort and Storm should really have nothing to do with one another.
Which is a case for that version. But yeah, no, I don't buy it. But again, just inverted Quentin is what bugs me most about this. Because with Storm, like, making her over-the-top petty and vindictive and evil, yeah, I can see that as an inversion, but
Well, regardless, so we said that the Logan Legacy has been an example of an event that Marvel's doing that actually is paying off in useful, good stories. Axis, I gotta say, this issue right here is an example of just kind of a cheap, gimmicky tie-in that really probably doesn't need to exist.
I just want it to go away. Normally this is the point where we stop and talk about our issue of the week and panel of the week, but we don't really have a panel of the week. There was a lot this week that was pretty good, and a lot of solid issues, but no one panel that really stood out to us, and we kind of didn't want to force that one.
That being said, if you think that you have a good pick for Panel of the Week, check out our website, rachelandmiles.com, find this article, leave a comment, tell us what you think.
Otherwise, just go back and reread the most recent issue of Uncanny X-Men, because there are always going to be like 6 panels we weren't able to put in because there wasn't enough space, and you can just extend those out as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
That said, we do have an issue of the week. Miles, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so as I'm sure comes as no surprise, I think our issue of the week is going to have to be Amazing X-Men number 13. I'm really happy that an Amazing X-Men issue actually made that, because the series has been just sort of okay so far. But this one, it's got heart, it's got some really great visual pacing, some great character development, and it manages to work in what makes X-Men X-Men without feeling derivative. I love the characters. I love the combination of the characters, which is one we haven't really seen, I don't believe, at all to any extent.
Yeah, I want to see Northstar and Nightcrawler being bros, like, forever now.
Yeah, they can have a road movie. It'll be great.
Yes! Yes!
Right. There we
go.
Marvel, we're pitching you this book right now.
Call us.
And Anil can, tag along and be hiding in the trunk, and they don't find him until they're gone too far, and there you go. You have your 3 characters. Perfect. But anyway, it's a good standalone issue, and I really like seeing that. I like issues that I can just hand to a person who hasn't really been keeping up with X-Men, or even who's never read X-Men, and say, here, check this out. You will enjoy this. If you like it, I'll find you some more stuff to read. This is really one of them. So, well done, this issue. I hope we see more like it.
So that wraps things up for the week. If you enjoy what you're seeing here, please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up on Sundays at rachelandmiles.com, also on iTunes and Stitcher.
This time we're talking about a couple of crossover-y events. One, the X-Men and the Micronauts. The Micronauts were some characters based on toys who had a surprisingly good comic come out of that. And the other being the X-Men and the New Teen Titans back from 1982.
And you know what that means? Crossover Earth!
Crossover Earth. They have their own numbers and everything. You know the drill. So yeah, please check it out. And also, we want to, as always, thank our awesome Patreon supporters. You guys make these videos and all the work we do possible. Thanks. If anybody wants to become a Patreon supporter, then you're awesome, and we would love that. And you can just go to rachelandmiles.com and check out the link on the top.
Or follow the information at the link right below this video.
It's right there.
It is. It's actually hovering right, but it's at roughly crotch level.
Dear God, we have no legs! How did I not know this? This is horrifying.
See you next week. So we'll have outtakes where I talk about how bad I feel about deleting what could have been good outtakes.